Hi, I'm Robert Osborne. Tonight, part of our Festival of Latino Images and Films, we're showing movies about Latin music. And with me to help put these films into context is my co-host for the festival, Chon Noriega, man who's an expert on the subject. And welcome back, Chon.
Great to be here, Robert.
Good to have you here. Now, the next film we have is from 1992 and stars Armand Assante and Antonio Banderas, playing brothers from Cuba trying to get a foothold in music here in America. The Mambo Kings, terrific movie. Now, this came out 5 years after La Bamba. Was it a big success?
I think it did well. It certainly it was part of a renewed attention to Mambo, which had been very popular in the 1950s. And in part, it's because it's based on the novel by Oscar Hijuelos, The Mambo Kings Play Songs of Love, which was the first novel by a Latino to win a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. So they had a lot to work with in making the film. But the other thing about the film that really makes it pop out is that it stars a lot of the actual figures from that period themselves, Tito Puente and also Celia Cruz. And there's also an appearance by Desi Arnaz Jr., who's playing his father. He would have been born around the time the film is set. But there's an interesting attempt to kind of make that connection with I Love Lucy.
Right, give some authenticity to it as well. It's
authenticity, and it's also, you have to realize this film, The Mambo Kings, is the only film dealing with the Cuban-American population that we're showing in the festival. And it's one of maybe 3 or 4 films that have been made. Scarface, it's, Crossover Dreams, and also The Perez Family by Mina Nair. So there aren't that many films. But what is at the center in terms of the Cuban-American crossover is I Love Lucy. And it really is a kind of touchstone or watershed moment for Latinos, but also for the Cuban-American population. One, in bringing Latin music to a national audience, but also just the fact of a Cuban-American character speaking Spanish on network television as one of the main characters in an ongoing sitcom. And it was really quite significant because particularly for Cuban Americans watching this, they would recognize this not just as Spanish, but as Cuban Spanish, and could have a sense of themselves being a part of national culture and also the most popular TV show on the air at that time.
Wasn't this Antonio Banderas' first Hollywood film?
This is his first Hollywood film. He had made 30 films in Spain, many of them with Pedro Almodovar, and so he was known to American audiences. But he had to learn his lines phonetically in
so
making the film.
he wasn't speaking English then. He does very well.
So you do have, the 2 leads are not necessarily Latino. The music throughout the film is not necessarily mambo music, and in fact, Tito Puente was mostly known for Latin jazz, and Celia Cruz, of course, was the queen of salsa. So in terms of absolute accuracy, you could quibble here and there, but the film is trying throughout in some very clever ways through bringing in documentary footage and other techniques to try to give a sense of that time, of the Palladium in the 1950s and of the Latin music and dance craze at that time, and in particular the multiracial, multi-ethnic kind of environment that it created through music.
Let's look at the film. One of my favorites from this period. Here's the movie nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song, Beautiful Maria of My Soul. Here's the Mambo Kings. Well, I'm back to talk about the Mambo Kings with my co-host, Chon Noriega, who's been with me every Tuesday and Thursday this month to talk about how Latinos have been portrayed in films throughout the years. Now, this movie isn't, as you said earlier, totally accurate in portraying, say, mambo. I mean, that great song, Maria of My Soul, that's, you say, not a mambo.
Yeah, it's actually more of a Cuban-style bolero. And I think, in some respect, you could kind of pinpoint that. But at the end of the day, the music is the music. It's very captivating. I think where the film kind of misses an opportunity, though, is to really explore the historical context. I mean, it starts in pre-Castro Cuba and ends up in the U.S. in the 1950s at a point of a period of phenomenal changes taking place in the East Coast, in popular culture. But for the most part, the film sticks to a very melodramatic context focused on the 2 brothers. So by the end of the film, you've heard some great music, you've seen some phenomenal performances. Celia Cruz is just amazing. She's kind of the real through line for the film, all the way through to the credit sequence. But as a story, you get less of a sense of the social relevance, and you get more of a bromance between the two brothers. That in a way seems a little unusual by the end of the film.
Now we're getting to more recent films, than we started out with, certainly. Is there one more than any other that you think presents a really most positive image about Latinos in films that we've had so far?
Well, I think it's less a case of pointing to one single film than with the Mambo Kings. We're in the middle of a period of about a decade in which you really see a significant shift. You see other types of films being brought before the American public, going back to Crossover Dreams and La Bamba, but also with Mambo Kings, and up through Selena. You begin to see films that are telling a different type of story, even when, in some cases, as with Stand and Deliver, there is an aspect of gang membership or gang violence that factors in. But the framework for the story is beginning to shift, and it's beginning to look more broadly at a culture. It's beginning to look at families in more diverse terms. And that's due in large part to the emergence of a new generation of filmmakers, Latino filmmakers in many respects, but also in the case of the Mambo Kings, a novel like Oscar Hijuelos' The Mambo Kings Play Songs of Love, which provides a different kind of source material for looking at the Latino population.
And there has to be a script. There's got to be a story.
You got to have something to work with,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Well, you're going to come back, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do plan on joining us for more of our Festival of Latino Images and Films next Tuesday, when Chon and I are going to be back to bring you some more movies. These movies focusing on street gangs and how that affected the image of Latinos. It's also going to be a night of TCM premieres. But in the meantime, do stick with us, because up next we have a film directed by Richard Lester in 1979, all about Cuba, starring Sean Connery.